Your daughter is not invited to my birthday party." My mother said it with the casual tone of someone asking for the salt. I looked beside me. My 12-year-old daughter, Maya, sat frozen. Her fork hovered an inch above her plate, her shoulders hitched up toward her ears. I did not scream. I did not throw my water glass. 2 days later, I mailed a box to that party. When my mother opened it in front of 50 guests, the color drained from her face. My father looked at the documents inside and whispered, "What did you do?" For 7 years, I had been the invisible bank funding my family. I paid the property taxes. I paid the heating oil. I paid for the very party my child was just banned from. That night, the bank closed. Welcome back to the Revenge Order channel, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything. How old are you right now? Drop your age in the comments and be sure to subscribe. The air in my parents' colonial house in Concord smelled of pot roast and lemon polish. Sunday dinner. My mother, Evelyn, sat at the head of the mahogany table. My father, David, sat at the opposite end, studying the condensation on his glass. I sat next to Maya. We were on dessert. Evelyn was holding a sheaf of cream-colored stationery. She was finalizing the seating chart for her 65th birthday gala at the Portsmouth Harbor Club. She listed the names aloud. A table for her tennis club friends. A table for my sister Vanessa and her 2 children. Evelyn paused. She tapped her pen against her chin and looked directly at me. "The kids' table is full," she said. Her voice carried that light, airy cadence she uses right before she cuts you. "So Maya won't be coming to the Harbor Club. It will just be too crowded for her." The clinking of silverware stopped. Maya looked down at her lap. She gripped her linen napkin in 2 small fists. My father cleared his throat. He opened his mouth, caught my mother's eye, and closed it again. He went back to studying his water glass. "I am an actuary. I run a firm that assesses long-term liabilities. I calculate risk down to the decimal. My job requires me to look at catastrophic loss and find the math underneath it. I have learned over 34 years that my mother feeds on reaction. She engineers public slights to provoke a scene. A scene makes me the unstable, difficult daughter and her the long-suffering victim. Take away the reaction, and you starve the machinery." I looked at Evelyn down the length of the table. I kept my face entirely still. I took my napkin, folded it into a neat square, and placed it next to my untouched pie. "Maya," I said, "get your coat, sweetheart." Maya slid off her chair and walked straight to the hallway closet. "Oh, do not be dramatic, Aaliyah," Evelyn sighed. She waved her hand, brushing the tension away. "It is one party. You always make things about you." "We are going to be late for something," I said. "We had nothing." I stood up and pushed my chair in. My father half rose from his seat. "Drive safe," he said quietly. He could not meet my eyes. The October air outside felt sharp and clean after the heavy warmth of that dining room. I buckled Maya into the passenger seat. She let me do it, which told me exactly how small she was feeling. We were 3 miles down the interstate, heading back toward our own house before she spoke. "Mom," her voice was thin in the dark car, "did I do something wrong?" I gripped the leather steering wheel. I wanted to turn the car around and tear that mahogany table in half. I pushed the feeling down because my daughter needed steady more than she needed angry. "You did nothing wrong," I said. "Nothing." "Then why doesn't Grandma want me there?" I did not have a clean answer for her. Not yet. The honest answer would require me to dismantle the lie I had been living for 7 years. I told her some grown-ups make mistakes and call them traditions. She watched the streetlights slide by. I kept my eyes on the road and started to do the math. To give my daughter the truth she deserved, I needed to open a ledger I had kept hidden on my laptop for a very long time. I parked the car in our driveway and turned off the engine. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and walked up the front steps without waiting for me. She went straight to her room. She did not ask for a snack. She did not turn on the television. She shut her door with a soft click. I stood in the hallway listening to the silence of a child who had decided to take up less space in the world. Her quietness felt heavier than a tantrum. I hung my keys on the hook and walked into my home office. I run my firm from a spare bedroom converted into a command center. 3 flat monitors form a semicircle on a glass desk. I woke the computer from sleep mode. The screens flared to life, casting a pale blue glow across the walls. I opened the encrypted drive where I keep my personal financials. I hovered my mouse over a folder labeled Concord Residence. I am not a martyr. I did not fund my parents' lifestyle out of pure altruism. I did it because I was carrying a debt that felt too heavy to name. To understand why a woman who negotiates million-dollar risk models for breakfast let her mother treat her like a doormat, you have to go back 12 years. I was 22 years old and terrified. My pregnancy with Maya had gone wrong in the 3rd trimester. I spent 6 weeks confined to a hospital bed, listening to the rhythmic beep of a fetal heart monitor. I had no insurance. The medical bills arrived in thick envelopes that piled up on my bedside tray. The numbers printed on those pages were suffocating. My father ran a local hardware store. It was a modest business built on handshake accounts and thin margins. He drained his retirement savings to keep the hospital from sending my accounts to collections. He sold off his inventory at a loss. David would visit my hospital room with dark circles under his eyes, smiling and telling me not to worry about the money. 6 months after Maya was born, the hardware store shuttered. The bank initiated foreclosure on the Colonial House in Concord, the house I grew up in. I remember the day they lost it. I stood on the sidewalk holding Maya wrapped in a fleece blanket. I watched a man in a blue jacket change the locks on my parents' front door. A yellow legal notice fluttered in the wind, taped to the wood. My mother stood next to me, refusing to look at my face. I swallowed that image. I decided right there on the pavement that I was the reason they lost everything. I was the catastrophic event. I owed them their lives back. It took me 5 years of working 80-hour weeks to build my actuarial firm. I did taxes at kitchen tables at 2 a.m. I built a client roster from nothing. The moment I had the capital, I tracked down the Concord house. It had gone back on the market after a corporate flip. I bought it in cash. I handed my parents the keys and drew up a lease that charged them $1 a year. I told myself I was making them whole. I told myself I was balancing the equation. I was actually building my own cage. The Concord house has a slate roof. It is beautiful from the street and fundamentally flawed in its design. Every spring, the New Hampshire snowmelt finds a seam above the east wing. Water seeps through the attic floorboards and stains the upstairs hallway ceiling a muddy brown. The air up there always smells faintly of wet plaster and decay. For 7 years, I have hired roofers to fix it. I write a check. The contractors lay down fresh tar and replace the slate. The ceiling looks pristine for a few months. Then the first heavy rain hits and the damp spot returns. One contractor finally explained it to me. He stood on a ladder and pointed at the pitch of the roof. He told me the angle was wrong. He said he could patch it forever, but the water would always find a way in because the foundation of the roof was inherently defective. I keep paying for the illusion of a dry house. The roof is exactly like my family. No matter how much money I apply as a sealant, the resentment always finds a new way in. Evelyn never forgave me for needing the money that broke them. More importantly, she never forgave me for being the one to buy the house back. My success is a daily reminder of her dependence. She cannot punish me directly because I hold the deed. So she punishes the one piece of me that cannot fight back. She targets Maya. I opened the master spreadsheet on my center monitor. The columns stretched down the screen, crisp and orderly. I had never let myself scroll all the way to the bottom right cell. I always paid the bills individually, avoiding the cumulative truth. Tonight, I placed my hand on the mouse and scrolled down. I read the itemized lines one by one. Property taxes, $12,000 a year. Winter heating oil, $3,000 a season. David's blood pressure medication copays. The emergency plumbing repair in 2020. The landscaping service because Evelyn complained the yard looked embarrassing. The homeowner insurance premiums. The deposit for the Portsmouth Harbor Club gala. I reached the bottom right cell. $142,000. I stared at the six-figure number glowing on the screen. Generosity is a gift you give freely. This was an arrangement nobody had ever named out loud. I supplied the money. My family supplied the verdict that I was the difficult daughter who owed them for her past mistakes. I had bought my own bad reputation on autopay. Every check I wrote was supposed to buy a little more peace. Instead, I had funded a machine that actively hurt my child. I realized, sitting in the quiet blue light of my office, that I was not acting out of love. I was paying a ransom, and the hostage takers had just locked my daughter out of the dining room. The emotional fog I had been carrying for 12 years evaporated. It was replaced by the cold, sterile clarity I use when I analyze a failing company. The fixing was over. I reached for my mouse to close the file. The silence of the office broke. My phone illuminated face up on the glass desk. The device vibrated, sliding a fraction of an inch across the smooth surface. The caller ID displayed Evelyn. It was 10:45 at night. My mother does not call late to apologize. She calls late when she wants to catch you off guard. She relies on the fatigue of the hour to extract favors. I watched the phone vibrate against the glass. I let it ring 3 times. I studied the name on the screen, measuring the exact weight of the woman on the other end of the line. She was calling to make a demand. She was going to ask for the one thing she had no right to ask for, and she was going to cross the final line. I pressed the green accept button on the 4th ring. I held the receiver to my ear. I did not say hello. I waited. "Aaliyah, sweetheart," Evelyn said. Her voice dripped with manufactured warmth. The pitch was elevated just a fraction. This is her asking tone. It is a specific vocal frequency she reserves for retail clerks and family members holding checkbooks. She breathed a gentle sigh into the receiver as if we had just finished a pleasant afternoon tea, instead of a dinner where she humiliated my 12-year-old daughter. She chatted about the autumn weather. She mentioned the floral arrangements she had selected for the tables. Then she pivoted to the actual reason for the late-night intrusion. "The events coordinator from the Harbor Club called me today," Evelyn murmured. "They are being rigid about their timeline. They need the final catering balance settled by Friday. It is $3,500. I looked at the glowing spreadsheet on my monitor. The audacity hung in the air between us. She was calling to ask me to underwrite the exact room where she had just declared my child was not welcome. She expected me to purchase the prime rib and the champagne for a party Maya was forbidden from attending. She wanted me to pay for the folding chairs, the linens, and the centerpieces that would sit on a table where my daughter was denied a seat. I did not answer immediately. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened a different folder on my desktop. I clicked on a PDF file labeled Harbor Club Agreement. The document loaded onto the screen in sharp black text. 4 months ago, when Evelyn first decided she needed a nautical-themed gala to impress her tennis club acquaintances, she hit a wall. High-end waterfront venues require credit checks for large events. My parents' credit score remained a casualty of the hardware store bankruptcy. Evelyn could not secure the reservation. She had called me in tears, talking about the deep embarrassment of losing her preferred date. She begged for a solution. So I provided my signature. I read the clauses on the screen. Section 4.2, Financial Guarantor Liability. I scrolled down to the final page of the PDF. Evelyn's signature was nowhere on the document. The venue management did not care about her birthday milestone. They cared about the financial bond. My name sat on the primary line in stark digital ink. Here is the detail my mother overlooked in her haste to secure a ballroom with a view of the Atlantic. When you ask someone to act as the sole financial guarantor, you hand them the legal authority over the contract. I held the power to alter the menu. I held the power to change the date. Most importantly, I held the unilateral right to revoke the payment method and cancel the event entirely. Under the eyes of New Hampshire contract law, I was not a guest at this party. I was the client. "Are you there, Aaliyah?" Evelyn asked. Her tone sharpened, losing a fraction of its artificial sweetness. "I am here," I said. "Good," she continued. "Now listen to me. I do not want you mentioning this balance to Vanessa. You know how sensitive your sister gets about money. Vanessa is 3 years older than me. She married a man who sells recreational vehicles on commission. They live 10 minutes from my parents' house. Vanessa is Evelyn's favored child precisely because she never left town and never succeeded enough to become intimidating. Evelyn curates a reality where Vanessa feels equal and successful. To maintain that illusion, Evelyn needs my money to remain invisible. If Vanessa knew I was funding the gala, it would fracture the narrative Evelyn has built. I want Vanessa to enjoy the night without feeling insecure, Evelyn said. So we will just keep this between us. You can handle the venue, and I will handle the family side of things. The mechanics of the manipulation were efficient. Evelyn was protecting her older daughter's feelings while draining my bank account to fund an exclusive party. She expected me to remain the silent ghost in the machine. I was supposed to quietly absorb the financial blow while allowing Evelyn to take the credit for a lavish event. I looked at the digital signature on the PDF. I felt my pulse steady. The familiar, cold logic of my profession washed over me. I do not argue with bad investments. I liquidate them. I will handle the Harbor Club, I said. My voice was flat and devoid of any emotional currency. Thank you, sweetheart, Evelyn sighed. You are always the responsible one. She took my measured tone for submission. She assumed the quietness meant I had surrendered to the natural order of the family. She hung up the phone. I sat in the blue light of my office for another hour. I read every line of the Harbor Club contract. I reviewed the cancellation policies. I checked the exact time and date the final deposit would trigger my credit card. Friday at noon. I had 4 days. I closed the files and shut down the computer. The screens went black. The room plunged into darkness. I walked down the hall and paused outside Maya's bedroom door. I listened to the steady rhythm of her breathing through the wood. I rested my palm flat against the white painted frame. I made a silent promise to the sleeping child inside. I would never let them make her feel small again. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen wiping down the marble island. I opened the front door to find my 14-year-old niece, Lily, standing on the porch. Lily is Vanessa's oldest child. She has her mother's blonde hair, but none of her cruelty. She shifted her weight from foot to foot, holding a geometry textbook against her chest. Mom asked me to drop off the casserole dish we borrowed, Lily said. She handed me a heavy ceramic container. She stepped inside out of the crisp autumn wind. She set her canvas backpack down on the kitchen island and pulled out her phone to text her mother that she arrived safely. "Do you want some water?" I asked. Lily nodded. I turned my back to grab a clean glass from the cabinet. I filled it from the refrigerator dispenser. Lily drank the water quickly, checking the clock on the microwave. "I have to get to soccer practice," she said. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and rushed out the front door. The house went quiet again. I turned around to finish wiping down the counter. Sitting on the marble island, abandoned, next to the fruit bowl, was Lily's tablet. It was a silver iPad with a cracked glass screen protector. I walked over to pick it up, intending to run out to the driveway and catch her before her ride drove away. Before my fingers touched the metal casing, the screen illuminated. A notification banner slid across the glass. The text on the banner was impossible to ignore. The notification banner slid across the glass surface of the tablet. The text was stark against the illuminated background. The message came from a group chat labeled Sunday Planners. The sender was Vanessa. The preview displayed 7 words. Did she pay the caterer yet? I stood motionless in my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed a quiet mechanical drone. I do not make a habit of invading digital privacy. I believe in boundaries. I practice discretion. But those 7 words anchored themselves in my mind. Evelyn had specifically commanded me to keep the catering payment a secret from my sister. She had spun a delicate story about protecting Vanessa's financial insecurities. Yet here was Vanessa asking about the exact transaction less than 16 hours later. The screen remained bright. Lily had not engaged the lock function before rushing out the door. The device rested open on the marble counter. The ethical boundary dissolved under the weight of my own survival instinct. I reached out and tapped the banner. The messaging application expanded to fill the display. I looked at the participant list at the top of the thread. Sunday Planners contained 4 members: Evelyn, Vanessa, Aunt Helen, Aunt Patricia. The core matriarchy of my family. The women who sat at Thanksgiving tables and smiled at my daughter while I poured the wine. I read the current exchange. Vanessa had sent the initial question about the caterer. 3 minutes later, Evelyn replied. Her response sat in a crisp gray bubble on the screen. Of course she did. She always folds. Aunt Helen chimed in immediately with a laughing face symbol. Vanessa responded with a simple thumbs up. I rested my fingertips against the cold edge of the kitchen island. The lie Evelyn had fed me on the phone was not just a manipulation. It was a coordinated performance. They had choreographed the entire late-night phone call. Vanessa knew about the Harbor Club deficit. She probably helped engineer the solution. I was the punchline to a joke shared among the women who shared my blood. An ordinary person might have thrown the tablet against the wall. An ordinary person might have called Vanessa and demanded an explanation. I did neither. The analytical mechanism in my brain engaged. I stopped being a daughter and transitioned into an auditor. I placed my index finger on the glass and scrolled up. I bypassed the logistics of the birthday party. I moved backward through October. I swiped past September. I read the chat history the way I review a compromised corporate ledger. I was looking for the origin of the discrepancy. I found a documented history of coordinated isolation. I scrolled back to the previous December. My family had planned a winter retreat to a lodge in the White Mountains. Evelyn had called me in November to explain the cabin was too small to accommodate children. She told me it was a strict adults-only weekend designed to give everyone a break from parenting. I had accepted her logic. I had even paid for a portion of the rental deposit as a Christmas gift to my parents. Maya and I spent that weekend in Concord, watching movies and drinking hot chocolate. I read the December message thread on the tablet. Vanessa had uploaded 6 photographs to the chat. They showed her 2 children wearing heavy snow gear building a snowman on the deck of the mountain lodge. Vanessa had typed a caption below the pictures. The kids are loving the fresh powder. Evelyn replied 2 minutes later. Beautiful. Just remember, do not post these on social media. Aaliyah might see them. Maya is too sensitive for the slopes anyway. I stared at the words. Maya is too sensitive for the slopes. They had hidden the children to orchestrate Maya's exclusion. They had taken my money to fund a family vacation and then actively conspired to ensure my daughter remained miles away. I swallowed the dry air in the kitchen. I kept scrolling. I moved back to April. Easter Sunday had always been a tradition at my parents' house. I remembered standing in the backyard watching the children line up for the annual egg hunt. Vanessa had brought oversized woven baskets for Lily and her younger brother. When Maya stepped onto the grass, there was no basket waiting for her. Evelyn had placed her hand on her chest, performing a perfect pantomime of distress. She blamed a mix-up at the boutique. She claimed the 3rd basket had been lost in transit. I had hugged Maya and promised her a trip to the toy store the next day. The digital record told the actual story. The night before Easter, Vanessa had sent a message to the group. Should I put together a basket for Maya? Evelyn's response was time-stamped at 9 in the evening. No, leave it. Let Aaliyah buy her something overpriced tomorrow. We are only doing baskets for the real grandchildren this year. The real grandchildren. The phrase struck the center of my chest with the precision of a sniper round. I read the sentence 3 times to ensure my eyes were not betraying me. We are only doing baskets for the real grandchildren. The chat was not a casual exchange of family gossip. It was a ledger of systematic starvation. It was a precise mathematical formula designed to diminish my child. I provided the financial crutch that kept their houses heated and their vacations funded. In exchange, they curated an environment where Maya was treated as a burden, an outsider, a guest who had overstayed her welcome. They did not ignore my daughter out of carelessness. Carelessness is forgetting a birthday or buying the wrong size shirt. This was architecture. This was a deliberate, calculated blueprint to isolate a 12-year-old girl. I reached into my pocket and extracted my own phone. I opened the camera application. I held my device steady over the tablet. I took photographs of the December ski trip exchange. I captured the Easter basket conversation. I photographed the most recent messages about the catering bill. I made sure the timestamps and the contact names were clearly visible in every frame. I was gathering evidence for a trial they did not know was coming. When I finished, I pressed the power button on the side of the iPad. The screen went black. I placed the device back onto the marble counter, exactly where Lily had left it. I adjusted the angle to match its original position. The physical environment of my kitchen had not changed. The refrigerator still hummed, the autumn sunlight still filtered through the window above the sink, but the foundational structure of my life had fundamentally fractured. The loyalty I had carried for 34 years evaporated, leaving behind a vast, cold emptiness. I turned my back on the kitchen island. I needed to see my daughter. I needed to look at the child I had inadvertently offered up as collateral to a family that despised her. I walked out of the kitchen and stepped into the main hallway. The wooden floorboards creaked softly under my boots. The corridor was shadowed. I moved toward the staircase, intending to go up to Maya's room. I stopped at the base of the stairs. Maya was standing on the bottom landing. She wore her gray sweatpants and an oversized hooded sweatshirt. She did not know I was watching her. She stood entirely still, looking down at her hands. She was holding a square piece of heavy construction paper. I recognized the thick, premium cardstock I had purchased for her art projects. It was the birthday card she had spent 3 hours drawing for Evelyn. I had seen her working on it the day before the Sunday dinner. She had used her specialized markers to sketch an intricate layered cake with 65 tiny individual candles. The digital betrayal I had just witnessed on the tablet was sickening. It was a cold, calculated ledger of adult cruelty. But the real heartbreak, the kind of pain that alters the chemistry of your blood, was happening right in front of me in the quiet hallway of my own home. Maya turned away from the lower landing and walked up the remaining carpeted stairs. I remained in the shadows of the lower hall, tracking her movements. She pushed her bedroom door open. It swung wide, revealing the interior of her personal sanctuary. The walls were painted a soft lavender. A corkboard hung above her desk, pinned with ribbons and academic ribbons. She sank onto the edge of her woven floor rug and crossed her legs. She held the thick, premium paper in her lap. I recognized the intricate cake design she had spent 3 hours perfecting. She had used a fine point marker to draw each of the 65 candles. She had shaded the frosting in alternating layers of pink and gold. Her fingertips still bore the faint, colorful smudges from the ink. It was a physical manifestation of a child asking to be loved, a quiet offering presented to a family that demanded tribute but offered no shelter. She did not weep. Her shoulders did not shake. She stared at the drawing for a long, quiet minute. The silence in the house felt heavy, pressing against the walls. Maya gripped the top edge of the cardstock with both hands. She pulled her hands in opposite directions. The thick paper resisted for a fraction of a second before giving way. The sound of the tear echoed down the hallway. It was a sharp, definitive rip. She aligned the two torn halves, stacked them together, and tore the pieces again. She reduced her careful artwork to quarters. She leaned over and dropped the fragments into the small wicker wastebasket beside her desk. She did not know I was watching. She did not seek an audience for her grief. She simply accepted her position in the family hierarchy and threw her effort away. I stood in the dim corridor and felt a fundamental shift in my own biology. The urge to fix things, the instinct that had defined my entire adult existence, died right there on the hardwood floor. I realized my financial contributions were not shielding my daughter. My money was actively subsidizing her trauma. Every check I wrote was a brick in the architecture of her exclusion. I was purchasing the exact weapons my relatives used against her. I turned away from her bedroom door and retreated to my home office. The glow of the monitors offered a sterile comfort. I could have stormed into the kitchen, grabbed the tablet, and confronted them with the digital evidence. I could have sent a group text exposing their private malice. But confrontation is a messy, erratic strategy. It allows the guilty party to deflect, to claim they were misunderstood, or to shift the blame. I prefer controlled variables. I gather data. I decided to introduce a new element into the system. I wanted to give my sister one final opportunity to act with basic human decency. I needed to see if the cruelty was a passive byproduct of maternal influence or an active choice my sibling embraced on her own. I needed a baseline measurement of her integrity. I picked up my cell phone from the glass desk. I navigated to my contacts list and pressed the dial icon next to my sister's name. The line rang twice. "Hello," Aaliyah. Her tone was brisk and cheerful. In the background, I could hear the faint sound of a television playing an animated show. Her children were home, enjoying a typical weekday afternoon in a house where they knew they belonged. "Hi, Vanessa," I said. I kept my voice soft, projecting a vulnerability I did not feel. "I wanted to talk to you about the party this weekend." "Mom already told me you were handling the venue logistics," she said. "That is so helpful of you. We are all really looking forward to the night. It is going to be beautiful." "I know the guest list is finalized," I continued, "and I know Mom feels the room is getting crowded. I am not asking for a seat at the main table. But Maya has been asking about the cake. She worked very hard on a birthday drawing. I was wondering if I could just bring her by for 30 minutes at the end of the night, just for the cake cutting. We would not even sit down. She can stand in the back near the doors." The silence on the line lasted barely a second. My sister did not hesitate. She did not stumble over her words or pause to consider the request. She delivered her response with the polished ease of a seasoned professional. "Oh, Aaliyah, we really cannot do that." Her voice dripped with counterfeit sympathy. "The Harbor Club is so strict about their capacity limits. They have a hard fire code cap for the private dining spaces. Mom would love to have her there, but her hands are tied. If the fire marshal walks in and sees extra bodies, the venue could shut the entire event down. We just cannot risk ruining Mom's big night over a technicality. You understand, right?" I looked at my center monitor. The PDF of the catering agreement was still open in a background window. I knew the exact dimensions of the rented ballroom. I had read the legal disclosures regarding the square footage. I knew the maximum legal occupancy dictated by the state of New Hampshire. The room held 200 people. The current approved guest list stood at 50. There was enough empty space in that hall to host a small wedding alongside the birthday gala. A single 12-year-old girl standing in the back of the room would not trigger a fire code violation. The math was absolute. The lie was provable. I did not confront her with the mathematics. I did not mention the contract holding my signature. I let her bathe in the success of her deception. I gave her enough rope to secure her own fate. "I understand," I said. My voice betrayed nothing. I would never want to cause a fire code violation. "Tell Mom I hope the cake cutting is wonderful." "You are being so mature about this," my sister replied. Her relief was palpable. "I will send you pictures, I promise." She ended the call. I lowered the phone to the glass desk. The sheer, effortless nature of the lie chilled the blood in my veins. My sibling had weaponized a fictitious fire marshal to keep her niece away from a sheet cake. She had framed the exclusion as an issue of legal compliance rather than a deliberate choice. She had lied to my face while accepting my money. I stood up and walked out of the office. My boots made no sound on the floorboards. I returned to the kitchen. The autumn light had shifted outside the window, casting long, dark shadows across the marble island. The silver tablet remained exactly where I had left it, next to the fruit bowl. The screen was dark. The house was still. I reached out and tapped the glass. The device woke up, illuminating the kitchen counter. The messaging application was still active. The screen displayed the Sunday Planner's chat history. I needed to see how my sister documented our phone call. I needed to know what she typed to the matriarchy the second she hung up the phone. I placed my finger on the glass and refreshed the communication thread. The screen buffered for a fraction of a second, pulling down the most recent data. I looked at the new gray bubbles populating the display and found the ultimate unforgivable truth staring back at me. The glass surface of the tablet felt cool under my index finger as I dragged the screen downward to refresh the application. A small loading wheel spun for a fraction of a second. The digital thread shifted upward, making room for the newest data. 3 new gray bubbles materialized at the bottom of the display. The first message belonged to Vanessa. The timestamp indicated she had sent it less than 90 seconds after disconnecting our phone call. Aaliyah just asked if Maya could come for cake. I told her the fire marshal excuse. Aunt Helen responded instantly with a digital sticker of a woman sipping tea. It was a visual representation of their shared amusement. They were congratulating themselves on successfully defending the perimeter against an unwanted guest. The third message came from Evelyn. I leaned closer to the marble island. I read the words my mother had typed into her phone. While sitting in the house I purchased for her. Good. Maya isn't really one of ours anyway. Aaliyah made her choice when she decided she didn't need us and became a hotshot. You stayed Vanessa. Your kids are the real family. I stood in the fading autumn light of my kitchen and read the paragraph again. I analyzed the sentence structure. I weighed the specific nouns and verbs. I stripped away my identity as a daughter and examined the text as a pure data set. The truth finally clicked into place, illuminating the dark corners of a mystery I had been trying to solve for over a decade. Evelyn was not punishing Maya because she disliked 12-year-old girls. She was punishing Maya to execute a long-term revenge strategy against me. In my family, compliance is the only recognized currency. Evelyn operates a matriarchal system built entirely on dependence. She needs to be the central sun around which her children orbit. Vanessa understood this early in life. Vanessa married a local salesman, stayed within a 10-mile radius, and brought her children to Sunday dinner every week to seek approval. Vanessa remained manageable. She traded her autonomy for the comfort of Evelyn's constant validation. I broke the generational cycle. I left town at 22, pregnant and unwed. In Evelyn's mind, that departure was a spectacular failure that should have resulted in my permanent submission. She expected me to return broken. She anticipated a scenario where I would beg for shelter and accept a lifetime of indentured gratitude. Instead, I built an actuarial firm from a laptop on a second-hand desk. I took night classes while my infant slept in a laundry basket next to my chair. I passed my licensing exams. I acquired high-net-worth clients. I generated wealth. My success was an insult to her control. The ultimate humiliation occurred when I bought the foreclosed colonial house and handed her the keys. Every morning, Evelyn wakes up under a slate roof owned by the daughter who refused to need her. I had achieved total financial independence, and in doing so, I had rendered her maternal authority obsolete. She could not attack my career. She could not criticize my bank account because she relied on the funds to maintain her country club facade. So she targeted the only vulnerable asset in my portfolio. She aimed her resentment at my child. By labeling Maya as not really one of ours, Evelyn effectively stripped my daughter of her familial status. Maya was reclassified as an outsider, a foreigner living in enemy territory. Evelyn orchestrated the excluded ski trips, the missing Easter baskets, and the banned birthday party invitations to send a clear message. She was showing me that my money could buy real estate, but it could never buy safety for my offspring. I looked at the silver tablet. The fixing was officially over. The emotional daughter who wanted to heal a broken family vanished. She evaporated into the cool, quiet air of the kitchen. In her place, the clinical actuary stepped forward. Actuaries do not experience sorrow when a structure fails. We evaluate the structural integrity, we assess the accumulated damage, and we initiate the liquidation protocol. You do not pour fresh capital into a toxic asset. You cut your losses and you walk away. I reached into my pocket and retrieved my own phone. I opened the camera function. I held my device steady over the tablet screen. I framed the shot carefully, ensuring the names, the timestamps, and the devastating text messages were sharply in focus. I pressed the capture button. The shutter clicked silently. I scrolled up to the Easter basket conversation and took another photograph. I scrolled further back to the winter ski trip and captured the evidence of their premeditated cruelty. I created a comprehensive digital archive of their malice. I did not miss a single detail. I gathered the proof with the meticulous care of an investigator securing a crime scene. When the archive was complete, I backed out of the messaging application. I pressed the power button on the tablet, sending the screen into darkness. I wiped my fingerprints off the glass with the edge of my sleeve. I nudged the device a quarter of an inch to the left, aligning it exactly where my niece had abandoned it, near the fruit bowl. The physical environment remained undisturbed. I walked out of the kitchen and moved down the hallway toward my home office. My steps were measured and deliberate. I did not feel the crushing weight of betrayal anymore. I felt the clean, sharp edge of purpose. I had spent 7 years acting as the foundational pillar for a group of people who despised my child. I was currently holding up their entire world. It was time to step out from under the weight and let gravity do the work. I sat down at my glass desk. The 3 monitors flared to life. I opened a search engine and typed in the name of a specific legal professional in Concord. Diane Foster is a real estate attorney I had collaborated with during a complex corporate merger 2 years prior. Diane possesses a reputation for being ruthless efficient and entirely unsentimental. She navigates property law with surgical precision. She is exactly the kind of professional you hire when you need to execute a complicated maneuver without generating unnecessary noise. I found her office number on her website directory. I picked up my phone and dialed the digits. The line connected to her reception desk. A polite voice informed me that Diane was currently in a meeting, but could take a brief interruption for an existing client. A minute later, the line clicked. Aaliyah Diane's voice was crisp and alert. "I have a closing in 10 minutes. What do you need?" "I need to transfer a deed," I said. My tone matched her professional cadence. "Buying or selling?" she asked. I could hear the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "Neither," I replied. "I am executing a gift transfer. I need to sign over the title of a residential property. Free and clear, no strings attached." Diane paused. The typing sound ceased. "You want to gift a property. Which property?" "The Colonial on Linden Street," I said. "The primary residence currently occupied by my parents. The deed is solely in my name. I want to transfer full legal ownership to Evelyn and David James. I need the paperwork drafted, expedited, and ready for my signature by tomorrow afternoon." The silence stretched over the cellular connection. Lawyers are trained to remain neutral, but they are also trained to spot anomalies. Gifting a premium piece of real estate in the middle of an autumn afternoon without prior financial consultation is a significant anomaly. Aaliyah Diane said, her voice slowing down, adopting a cautious tone. "That property is valued well over $400,000. Are you undergoing a specific tax strategy or estate planning maneuver that I should be aware of? People do not usually hand over high-value assets without a very specific reason." "I am undergoing a structural realignment," I said. I did not elaborate. I did not explain the Sunday dinner, the uninvited child, or the digital chat thread residing on my camera roll. I dealt only in logistics. "They will assume full ownership," I continued. "They will assume all accompanying liabilities. I want the transfer absolute and irreversible. Can you prepare the documents by tomorrow?" "I can have the initial drafts ready for your review by 10 in the morning, Diane said. "But you understand the implications of a quitclaim or gift deed. Once the ink dries, you have no legal authority over that parcel of land. You are handing them the keys to the castle." "I am handing them the entire kingdom, Diane. I appreciate your speed." I ended the call and placed the phone face down on the glass surface. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair and looked at the blank wall behind my monitors. The first piece of the apparatus was in motion. The anchor that tied me to their dysfunction was about to be severed. But giving away a house was only the opening move in a much larger sequence. To truly dismantle the illusion my mother had built, I needed to systematically target the invisible wires that kept her world illuminated. The law office of Diane Foster occupied the second floor of a restored brick building in downtown Concord. The interior featured exposed beams, heavy mahogany furniture, and the hushed atmosphere of a space where expensive problems are quietly resolved. I arrived at exactly 10 in the morning the following day. Diane met me in the lobby. She wore a tailored charcoal blazer and a look of distinct professional curiosity. She led me into a corner conference room overlooking Main Street. The autumn leaves were turning a brilliant burnt orange against the gray pavement. A thick manila folder rested in the center of a polished conference table. "Sit," Diane said, gesturing to a leather chair. "I drafted the documents you requested. Gift deed, absolute transfer of title. We are filing it under a standard familial property transfer to minimize the immediate tax friction on your end." I took my seat and opened the folder. The legal language was dense but familiar. It outlined the unconditional surrender of the Linden Street property from my portfolio to Evelyn and David James. Diane sat across from me, steepling her fingers. I process a lot of familial property disputes, Aaliyah. Most of the time, people come into this room fighting to keep a house away from toxic relatives. They set up trusts. They demand life estates. They put ironclad conditions on the transfer to ensure the occupants cannot sell the asset out from under them. You are doing the exact opposite. She leaned forward. You are handing over a historic colonial valued at nearly $500,000 without a single protective covenant. You are walking away from significant equity. I have an ethical obligation to ask you if you are acting under duress. I looked up from the paperwork. "Diane," I said, "I am not under duress. I am executing an exit strategy." I reached into my leather tote bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I slid it across the polished table. Diane picked it up and scanned the text. It was an estimate from a premier roofing contractor in Manchester. The document detailed the necessary structural repairs required to fix the persistent leak in the east wing of the Concord house. The bottom line of the estimate read, $8,400. For 7 years, I have played the role of the invisible safety net, I explained, keeping my voice level. My parents live in a reality where the roof never caves in, where the heat never shuts off, and where the property taxes simply vanish into the ether every November. They believe they are independent adults. They believe my financial contributions are minor conveniences that they are entitled to. Diane studied the roofing estimate. Her eyes flicked back to my face. By holding the deed, I allowed them to pretend I was just a landlord who owed them a favor, I continued. I absorbed the friction of their survival. If I keep the house, they get to keep playing the victims of a difficult daughter. They get to live in luxury while despising the woman who pays the mortgage. I tapped the legal documents resting in the manila folder. When I sign this paper, I am not giving them a gift. I am giving them a mirror. Diane set the estimate down. The confusion on her face slowly dissolved, replaced by a look of dawning comprehension. She was beginning to understand the mechanics of the maneuver. They will own the house outright, I said, free and clear. But the second this deed is recorded, they also inherit the reality of home ownership in New Hampshire. They inherit the $12,000 annual property tax bill due next month. They inherit the winter heating oil costs, and they inherit a roof that is going to start dumping water into the upstairs hallway the second the December snow melts. I leaned back in the leather chair. I am not taking anything away from them, Diane. I am handing them the exact life they claim they built on their own. I am leaving them completely unshielded from the consequences of their independence. Let us see how long the matriarchy survives when the bills arrive in their own mailbox. Diane looked at me for a long, quiet moment. The corners of her mouth twitched upward in a grim, calculating smile. It was the expression of a professional recognizing a flawless legal execution. She reached into her blazer pocket and produced a silver pen. "Sign on the indicated lines," she said, sliding the folder toward me. "I will have my paralegal notarize the signatures and file the transfer with the county clerk before lunch. The property will be legally theirs by the end of the business day." I took the pen. The metal barrel felt heavy and cold against my fingers. I turned to the final page of the document. I did not hesitate. I signed my name with a smooth, practiced motion. I executed the transfer. The transaction took less than 3 minutes. I handed the folder back to Diane. She closed it and stood up. "Are you planning to tell them?" she asked, gathering the paperwork. A transition of this magnitude usually requires a transition period. They will need to adjust their insurance policies and update their tax filings. "Oh, I am going to tell them," I said, standing up and adjusting the strap of my tote bag. "I have a very specific delivery method in mind." I walked out of the law office and stepped onto the busy sidewalk of Main Street. The cold autumn wind caught my hair. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not triumph. Triumph implies a battle fought and won. What I felt was the distinct lightness of amputation. I had surgically removed a necrotic limb that had been dragging me down for a decade. The colonial house was no longer my liability. The leaking roof belonged to Evelyn now. But the deed transfer was only the opening sequence. The house was the largest financial anchor, but it was not the only one. Evelyn's comfortable existence was supported by a complex web of automated payments and invisible subsidies. To truly dismantle her reality, I needed to sever every single thread. I walked to my car parked a block away. I unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. I did not turn on the radio. I drove back to my home office in silence, mentally mapping out the digital infrastructure I had built to sustain my family. I needed to execute a surgical strike on the auto-pay system. When I arrived home, the house was quiet. Maya was at school. The silver tablet was gone from the kitchen counter, Lily having returned to retrieve it earlier that morning. The environment was perfectly controlled. I walked into my office and woke the 3 monitors from sleep mode. I cracked my knuckles and opened my primary banking portal. The screen populated with my checking and savings accounts. I navigated to the Recurring Transfers tab. The list of automated payments stretched down the left side of the screen. I scrolled to the top entry. It was a scheduled monthly transfer of $1,200 routed directly into Evelyn and David's joint checking account. I had set up this transfer 5 years ago, framing it as an incidental stipend to help with groceries and utilities. It had run silently on the first of every month, functioning as an invisible pension. I hovered the cursor over the Edit button. I clicked Cancel Recurring Transfer. A prompt appeared asking me to confirm the deletion. I clicked Confirm. The line item vanished from the ledger. I moved to the next entry, the local heating oil company. New Hampshire winters are brutal, and the colonial house required constant fuel deliveries to keep the radiators functioning. I had linked my primary credit card to their account, ensuring they never woke up to a cold house. I logged into the heating company portal. I navigated to the billing section. I deleted my credit card information. I changed the billing preference from automated payment to manual invoice. The next time the delivery truck filled their tank, the driver would hand Evelyn a paper bill for $800. The process was methodical. I unlinked my account from the regional pharmacy chain that processed David's expensive blood pressure medication. I removed my payment data from the landscaping service that manicured Evelyn's front lawn every 2 weeks. I severed the connection to the premium cable package that provided their television service. With every click, I dismantled a piece of the artificial environment my mother occupied. I was turning off the invisible life support machines one by one. I saved the most critical transaction for last. I opened the dedicated folder for the Portsmouth Harbor Club. I logged into the venue management portal using the access credentials provided in my guarantor contract. The dashboard displayed the details of Evelyn's upcoming 65th birthday gala, the guest count, the menu selections, the floral arrangements, and the outstanding catering balance of $3,500 scheduled to auto-draft from my account on Friday at noon. I navigated to the payment settings. The system recognized me as the primary financial authority. I located the credit card on file. I highlighted the data. I pressed Delete. A red warning banner flashed across the top of the screen. Removing the payment method will result in an unpaid balance. The venue may suspend services until a new payment method is provided. I confirmed the deletion. The credit card information disappeared, leaving a blank void in the billing section. The gala was now entirely unfunded. I sat back in my chair. The digital strike was complete. In exactly 14 minutes, I had erased 6 years of financial architecture. I had not sent a single angry text message. I had not raised my voice. I had simply turned off the tap. The silence in the office was profound. I expected to feel a surge of adrenaline, but instead I felt a deep, steady calm. The trap was armed. The pieces were in place. Now I only had to wait for the system to react. I did not have to wait long. An hour later, my cell phone vibrated on the glass desk. The caller ID displayed an incoming message from Vanessa. The text contained a veiled manipulation designed to test my compliance and ensure the money was still flowing. Evelyn had undoubtedly dispatched her older daughter to perform a reconnaissance mission. They were trying to manage the perimeter. They had no idea the perimeter was already gone. The digital infrastructure that supported my family was dismantled. The autopay systems were severed. The credit cards were unlinked. The Colonial House was legally gifted. I sat in my office, breathing in the quiet air of a reality I finally controlled. The 14 minutes of administrative execution had rewired the power dynamics of a 34-year relationship. My cell phone vibrated against the glass desk, shattering the silence. The screen illuminated, displaying a text message from Vanessa. The notification preview offered a glimpse into the ongoing psychological operation. My sister was functioning as Evelyn's proxy, testing the defenses to ensure their financial resource remained docile. "Hey, Aaliyah," Vanessa's message read. "Mom is stressing about the final details for the party. Just checking in to make sure you got the Harbor Club balance sorted. She wants everything perfect." I read the text and felt a profound sense of detachment. A week ago, this message would have triggered a familiar anxiety. I would have rushed to reassure her, providing confirmation numbers and promising that the crisis was averted. I would have played my assigned role as the invisible, reliable bank. Today, I viewed the text through the lens of an actuary assessing a fraudulent claim. Vanessa was not concerned about Evelyn's stress. She was concerned about the catering bill. She needed confirmation that I had folded and paid the ransom so she could continue to enjoy the benefits of an exclusive party without contributing a single dollar. I typed a reply matching her casual tone. "The Harbor Club is handled. Tell Mom not to worry about a thing." I pressed send. The statement was factually accurate. I had handled the venue. I had logged into the portal and removed the payment method, ensuring the bill would land squarely on Evelyn's shoulders. I had handled the situation with absolute finality. Vanessa responded instantly with a series of heart emojis. "You are the best, Aaliyah. See you soon." She believed the crisis was averted. She assumed her manipulation was successful. She had no idea the financial bridge she was standing on had just collapsed into the river. I placed the phone back on the desk. The diversion was successful, but the larger game was still in motion. Evelyn is a master tactician when it comes to family dynamics. She operates on a level of emotional surveillance that borders on paranoia. She possesses a sixth sense for shifting loyalties. Even though Vanessa received confirmation regarding the catering bill, Evelyn would undoubtedly sense a disturbance in the atmosphere. When Evelyn feels threatened, her immediate reflex is to secure her perimeter. She systematically neutralizes any potential allies her target might recruit. In this specific scenario, the only variable she could not entirely control was my father. David James is a passive man. He is a man who weathered a brutal bankruptcy by retreating into the quiet corners of his life. He avoids conflict. He defers to Evelyn's social orchestrations because arguing requires an energy he exhausted 12 years ago. He sat at the Sunday dinner and stared at his water glass while Evelyn banned Maya from the party. He chose the path of least resistance. But David is not inherently malicious. He possesses a genuine affection for Maya. He attended her elementary school band concerts. He bought her ice cream after soccer games. He operated in a separate lane from Evelyn's cruelty, interacting with my daughter only when his wife was distracted. Evelyn knows this. She knows that if David understood the true depth of her malice, If he realized she was actively starving his granddaughter of affection out of pure spite, he might finally break his silence. He might intervene. He might disrupt the birthday gala she had so carefully designed. To prevent this outcome, Evelyn initiated a preemptive strike on my father's reality. My phone vibrated again. This time it was an incoming text from David. My father is a man who treats a smartphone like a foreign artifact. He types with one index finger, carefully hunting for each letter. A text message from him is a rare occurrence, usually reserved for holidays or mechanical emergencies involving his car. The message appeared on the screen. "Hi, Aaliyah. Your mother said Maya has a weekend math competition. That is a shame she cannot make the party. Tell her good luck from Grandpa. We will celebrate with her next week." I stared at the screen. The text was a masterpiece of manufactured deception. Evelyn had not told David about the Sunday dinner confrontation. She had not explained that she banned Maya because the kids' table was full. She had constructed an entirely fictitious narrative to explain my daughter's absence. She invented a scholastic conflict, a weekend math competition. She fed this lie to her husband to ensure his compliance. She manipulated his reality so he would attend the Portsmouth Harbor Club gala, believing everything was perfectly normal. She insulated him from the truth so he would not defend his granddaughter. She weaponized his passivity, transforming him into an unwitting participant in her cruelty. I read the text again. The betrayal cut deeper because it involved the only family member who had ever shown Maya a fraction of genuine warmth. David was sitting in the colonial house I had just gifted to him, blindly accepting a narrative designed to protect his wife's social standing. He was collateral damage in Evelyn's war. But ignorance is not an acceptable defense when a child is being targeted. I picked up the phone. I did not draft a gentle response. I did not attempt to soften the blow. I deployed the truth with surgical precision. "Dad," I typed. "There is no math competition. Maya is not attending the party because Mom banned her at dinner. She told Vanessa that Maya is not really one of ours. Mom is punishing Maya to punish me. I am not coming to the party either." I read the message, reviewing the text for emotional leakage. The words were sterile, factual, and devastating. I pressed send. The message delivered instantly. I watched the screen, observing the digital read receipts. The indicator shifted from delivered to read. My father was looking at the text. A small gray bubble appeared containing 3 typing dots. David was formulating a response. The dots vanished. The screen remained blank. A minute passed. The dots reappeared. He was typing again. The dots vanished a second time. I waited in the quiet blue light of my office, listening to the ambient hum of the computer towers. 5 minutes elapsed. 10 minutes. The screen remained dark. My father did not reply. He did not call. He did not demand an explanation or rush to my defense. He read the truth. He absorbed the reality of his wife's malice. And he chose silence. The cowardice was profound. His failure to respond was a definitive answer. He had chosen the comfort of his colonial house over the protection of his granddaughter. The last tether binding me to that family dissolved. I felt a cold, absolute clarity settle over my mind. Evelyn had successfully manipulated her husband. She had dispatched Vanessa to secure the perimeter. She believed her birthday gala was safe. She assumed the financial foundation I provided was still intact. She was operating under the delusion that she was untouchable. It was time to introduce a variable she could not anticipate. It was time to deploy a diversion so flawless she would walk willingly into her own public execution. I needed to construct a scenario where Evelyn demanded the spotlight, ensuring her humiliation would be witnessed by every person she sought to impress. I opened a new text message thread addressed to Vanessa. I needed to feed the matriarchy a piece of information so enticing they would drop all their defenses. I needed to offer them a red herring. The gray typing bubble vanished from the screen of my cellular phone. It did not return. I sat in the ergonomic chair of my home office, and let the reality of my father's cowardice wash over me. David James built his entire life working with his hands. He sold nails and lumber and drywall to local contractors. He understood the structural integrity of physical objects. He could calculate the load-bearing capacity of a wooden beam simply by looking at it. But he possessed zero emotional fortitude. When his hardware business collapsed 12 years ago, he handed his spine to my mother and never asked for it back. He retreated into the quiet shadows of the colonial house I purchased for him. He avoided conflict because arguing required an energy he no longer possessed. My message remained visible on the glass display. Dad, there is no math competition. Mom banned her because she said, Maya is not one of ours. The digital timestamps proved he read the text. He saw the words. He absorbed the unvarnished truth regarding his wife's calculated cruelty toward his own granddaughter. His decision to remain silent rather than defend a 12-year-old girl provided the final confirmation I needed. Any lingering guilt I harbored about gifting them the property and the failing roof evaporated into the cool air of my office. David was not an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire of a matriarchal war. Complicity is an active choice. He chose the comfort of his heated living room over the protection of my child. His shattered ignorance was a burden he would have to carry alone. I turned my attention back to the computer monitors. The digital clock in the lower corner of the screen shifted to late afternoon. The deadline for the Portsmouth Harbor Club payment was rapidly approaching. Evelyn operates on a baseline frequency of high anxiety. She micromanages every social interaction within our family. My uncharacteristic silence regarding the Sunday dinner was likely triggering her internal alarms. In the past, I always attempted to smooth things over. I usually called to negotiate a truce or apologize for causing a scene. My sudden absence from the communication grid meant she was losing control of the narrative. She could not tolerate the uncertainty. She needed to secure her perimeter. My phone illuminated again. Vanessa was initiating a secondary reconnaissance mission. Her previous text message had been a casual inquiry masquerading as sisterly concern. This new message carried a distinct edge of panic. Mom is driving everyone crazy, Aaliyah Vanessa wrote. The venue coordinator has not confirmed the final headcount payment. Did you actually settle the Harbor Club balance? Send me a screenshot of the confirmation so I can get her to calm down. I read the demand and felt a sharp spike of tactical awareness. Vanessa was pushing for tangible proof. If I ignored her text, she would likely call the venue directly to verify the status of the account. If Vanessa called the events manager, the staff would inform her that the credit card on file had been deleted. The financial guillotine would be discovered prematurely. The entire operation relied on Evelyn arriving at the birthday gala, operating under the delusion of total security. I needed a diversion. I needed to feed them a narrative so intoxicating they would immediately abandon their investigation into the catering bill. I needed to leverage their inherent greed. I opened a mental file regarding my mother's recent obsessions. 3 weeks prior, during a rare joint shopping trip, Evelyn had dragged me into a premium jeweler on Main Street. She had spent 45 minutes trying on a specific diamond pendant. She stood in front of the illuminated glass cases, commenting repeatedly on how perfectly the stone would complement the navy blue dress she purchased for her gala. She made certain I saw the price tag resting on the velvet tray. $4,000. She had been laying the groundwork for a guilt purchase. Evelyn assumed my inevitable absence from her birthday party would generate enough remorse to fund the jewelry acquisition. She believed I would attempt to buy my way back into her good graces. I opened the messaging application and formulated a response designed to trigger their avarice. I crafted a lie built entirely on their own shallow expectations. I cannot send a screenshot I typed. The Harbor Club payment is tied up in a larger transaction I authorized this morning. Tell Mom I am arranging a special delivery for her birthday gift. It requires venue coordination. It will arrive by courier at 3:30 on Saturday. Do not let her open it until everyone is seated. I reviewed the text. The phrasing was precise. a special delivery arriving by courier, a transaction large enough to bundle with a $3,500 catering bill, a gift that required an audience. Vanessa would read those words and immediately jump to the exact conclusion I desired. I pressed send. The reply came almost instantaneously. "Oh my God," Aaliyah, Vanessa wrote. "Did you get her the necklace? She is going to cry. You are the best daughter. I will tell her everything is handled." I stared at the screen and felt a cold wave of satisfaction. You are the best daughter. The title was transactional. I earned my sisterly affection by opening my wallet. The illusion of a $4,000 diamond had effectively blinded my sister to the reality of the deleted credit card. Vanessa abandoned her inquiry into the catering confirmation without a second thought. The prospect of a luxurious gift erased all her suspicions. The trap was secure. The red herring was successfully deployed. Evelyn would spend the next 48 hours anticipating a high-end public tribute. She would arrive at the Portsmouth Harbor Club radiating arrogance. She would demand the attention of her 50 guests to witness my financial submission. She would build the exact stage required for her own unmasking. I placed the phone face down on the desk. The digital maneuvers were complete. The legal documents were signed. The auto-pay systems were dismantled. The diversion was accepted. I stood up from my ergonomic chair and stretched my legs. The physical environment of my home felt different. The air felt lighter. I walked out of the office and headed toward the kitchen to prepare dinner for my daughter. I needed to focus on the tangible reality of the child I was protecting. I opened the pantry and selected a box of pasta. I filled a stainless steel pot with water and placed it on the stove. As I watched the water come to a rolling boil, my mind shifted to the final logistical requirement of the operation. I had neutralized the digital threats and secured the perimeter. Now I needed to assemble the physical evidence. I needed to gather the raw data that would dismantle Evelyn's pristine reputation and place it inside a package she would willingly open in front of her country club friends. I needed to construct the bomb. The bait was taken. Vanessa and Evelyn were operating under the delusion that a $4,000 diamond was currently in transit. My sister had successfully neutralized my mother's anxiety regarding the catering bill, replacing it with the intoxicating anticipation of public luxury. Dramatic irony is a powerful tool when deployed correctly. It allows the architect to observe the target celebrating the very mechanism of their own destruction. I stood in my kitchen and watched the pasta water boil. I lowered the heat to a simmer. I needed to shift my focus from digital manipulation to physical assembly. Friday morning arrived crisp and cold. The sky above Concord was a flat, uniform gray, promising the first genuine freeze of the season. I dropped Maya off at her middle school, watching her walk through the double doors, wearing her heavy winter coat. She turned and waved a small, cautious gesture before disappearing into the crowded hallway. The sight of her fortified my resolve. I drove to a local high-end stationery boutique located in the downtown shopping district. The store smelled of expensive paper and scented sealing wax. I browsed the aisles with the detached precision of an auditor inspecting an inventory list. I selected a heavy cream-colored gift box. The cardboard was thick and rigid, offering a substantial weight that implied luxury. It was the exact type of packaging a premium jeweler would use to deliver a high-value item. I brought the box to the checkout counter and purchased a spool of satin ribbon. I chose a deep navy blue. It was Maya's favorite color. A silent signature encoded into the presentation. I returned to my home office. The house was empty and silent, providing the sterile environment I required for the final assembly. I set the cream-colored box on my glass desk. The process of packing the evidence required a specific chronological sequence. I needed Evelyn to pull the items out of the box in an order that maximized the psychological impact. The narrative arc of her humiliation had to build progressively, ensuring she could not formulate an excuse before the next piece of evidence presented itself. I opened the manila folder Diane Foster had provided the previous day. I extracted the notarized gift deed, the legal document transferring the historic colonial house on Linden Street exclusively into Evelyn and David James' names. The paper was crisp, the signatures stark in blue ink. I took the roofing estimate I had printed from the Manchester contractor, the document detailing the $8,400 structural repair required to fix the leaking roof. I placed the estimate directly on top of the deed and secured them together with a heavy silver paperclip. This was the opening volley, the false gift. Evelyn would see the deed and experience a fleeting moment of triumph. She would believe I had surrendered my ultimate leverage. She would assume the house was her final victory. The roofing estimate would be her first indication that the victory came with an immediate, crushing liability. I placed the clipped documents flat against the bottom of the cream-colored box. I turned to my computer monitor and opened a word processing application. I loaded a template featuring my actuarial firm's official letterhead. The logo sat sharp and professional at the top of the page. I began drafting a formal termination notice. I did not use emotional language. I did not mention the Sunday dinner or the uninvited child. I utilized standard corporate terminology to sever a financial relationship. Effective immediately, all recurring subsidies and automated financial support provided to Evelyn and David James are hereby terminated. This includes, but is not limited to, the monthly residential stipend, the seasonal heating oil account, the automated pharmacy copays, and the property maintenance services. The guarantor contract associated with the Portsmouth Harbor Club has been voided. The credit card on file has been permanently deleted. I printed the single-page document. I folded it into crisp thirds and placed it directly on top of the deed inside the box. The letter was the secondary payload. Once Evelyn processed the reality of the roofing estimate, the letterhead would inform her that the invisible bank she relied upon for survival was closed. She would realize the depth of her exposure. I needed to provide the numerical context of her dependence. I opened the master spreadsheet tracking 7 years of expenditures. I adjusted the formatting to ensure the data fit onto a single printed page. I highlighted the final cumulative total in bold text. $142,000. I printed the ledger. The column of numbers represented the exact price of my compliance over the past decade. It was an itemized receipt for the life Evelyn claimed she built on her own. I folded the ledger and placed it over the termination letter. The administrative payload was complete. The house, the severed accounts, the historical debt. These documents would dismantle her financial reality. But they did not address the emotional core of the betrayal. They did not answer the fundamental question of why the structure was collapsing. I stood up from the desk and walked down the hall to Maya's bedroom. I stepped over the threshold and approached the small wicker wastebasket beside her desk. I reached inside and retrieved the 4 torn fragments of heavy construction paper. The remains of the birthday card Maya had spent 3 hours drawing, the intricate cake with 65 tiny candles, now reduced to jagged quarters. I carried the torn pieces back to my office. I did not attempt to tape them back together. The destruction was the message. I placed the 4 fragments carefully into the center of the box, resting them gently on top of the printed ledger. This was the emotional detonator. The physical evidence of a 12-year-old girl's broken heart. Evelyn would look at the torn card and know exactly what triggered the administrative guillotine. She would understand that her coordinated isolation of my daughter was the catalyst for her own ruin. There was one final item required to complete the package. I opened the top drawer of my desk and retrieved a blank place card. I had purchased a stack of heavy cream stock paper during my trip to the stationery boutique. I uncapped a fine-point black fountain pen. I possess a steady hand. I took a deep breath and carefully mimicked the looping, pretentious cursive Evelyn used on her seating charts. I wrote a single word across the center of the card. Maya. I placed the calligraphed place card at the very top of the items inside the box. It would be the first thing Evelyn saw when she lifted the lid. The seat my daughter was never allowed to take delivered directly to the seat of honor. I placed the lid onto the cream-colored box. I measured a length of the navy blue satin ribbon and tied a precise, unyielding knot across the top. The package looked elegant, expensive, and entirely harmless. It looked exactly like a gift a wealthy daughter would send to apologize for her absence. I checked my watch. The logistics of the delivery required strict coordination. I opened the browser on my computer and navigated to the website of a premium courier service based in Portsmouth. I initiated a specialized delivery order. I selected the option for a guaranteed time-specific drop-off. I entered the address for the Portsmouth Harbor Club. I provided Evelyn James as the designated recipient. I selected the delivery window with absolute precision. 3:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. The timing was critical. The gala began at 3 o'clock. The guests would arrive, mingle, and locate their assigned seats. By 3:30, Evelyn would be seated at the head table, holding court among her tennis club acquaintances and the extended family. The venue coordinator would be preparing to transition the room for the first toast. The courier would arrive at the exact moment Evelyn demanded the full attention of her audience. The red herring guaranteed she would open the box in front of 50 witnesses. I finalized the courier payment using a secure corporate account entirely separate from the deleted personal credit cards. The confirmation screen flashed green. The order was locked. The box sat on the glass surface of my desk. The navy ribbon caught the ambient light from the monitors. The assembly was complete. The evidence was secured. The delivery mechanism was engaged. I had constructed a trap built entirely of unassailable facts, and I had arranged for the target to trigger the mechanism herself. The remaining hours of Friday stretched ahead. I needed to pick Maya up from school and maintain a facade of ordinary routine. I needed to ensure my daughter felt completely insulated from the blast radius of the upcoming weekend. The administrative warfare was finished. Now I simply had to wait for the calendar to turn to Saturday. Saturday morning arrived with a biting frost that coated the windows of my home in a thin layer of ice. The sky shifted from a deep charcoal to a pale, unforgiving gray. I woke long before dawn. The house remained completely silent. I walked into my office holding a mug of black coffee and stood over the glass desk. The cream-colored box rested exactly where I had left it the previous night. I had not yet secured the lid. I needed to look at the contents one final time to ensure the sequence was flawless. I set my coffee down and peered into the cardboard container. The items formed a precise vertical stack. This was not a collection of insults or emotional outbursts. Emotional arguments are malleable. My mother could twist an angry letter into a narrative of victimhood. She could cry over a perceived slight and convince her audience that she was being unfairly attacked. She could not cry over mathematics. She could not gaslight a legal document. The package sitting on my desk was a weapon constructed entirely of absolute, undeniable facts. I looked at the bottom layer, the notarized property deed transferring the $500,000 colonial house into her name. Fastened directly to the legal transfer was the roofing estimate detailing the $8,400 structural repair. This combination represented the sudden transfer of gravity. For 7 years, I had suspended her reality artificially. The deed and the estimate would force her feet onto the ground. She would finally feel the crushing weight of her own existence. Resting above the deed was the termination letter, printed on my professional corporate stationery. The formal declaration severing all automated financial subsidies, the heating oil, the property maintenance, the pharmacy co-pays, the monthly stipend. I stared at the crisp black text. I thought about the thousands of hours I had spent reviewing risk models and analyzing actuarial tables to generate the income that funded those accounts. I had traded my time and my energy to purchase a fleeting illusion of familial harmony. The termination letter was my official resignation from that arrangement. Directly above the letter lay the printed spreadsheet, the column of numbers detailing the $142,000 I had spent keeping them afloat. It was the ultimate ledger. When Evelyn looked at that page, she would see the exact cost of the independence she claimed to possess. She would realize her entire social standing was a hollow facade, subsidized by the daughter she continually tried to diminish. I shifted my gaze to the emotional core of the package, the 4 torn fragments of heavy construction paper, the birthday card Maya had painstakingly drawn, featuring a layered cake and 65 individual candles. The sight of the torn paper caused a familiar tightening in my chest. It was the physical evidence of a child recognizing her own rejection. Placing those fragments inside the box was the most difficult decision of the entire operation. A part of me wanted to shield Maya entirely and pretend the trauma never occurred. But acknowledging the damage is the first step in neutralizing the threat. Evelyn needed to understand that her calculated isolation of my daughter was the catalyst for this administrative execution. She needed to hold the shredded innocence in her own hands. Finally resting at the very top of the stack was the calligraphed place card. Maya. Written in the same looping cursive Evelyn used for her prestigious seating charts. It was a proxy for the grandchild who was banned from the dining room. I reached for the heavy cardboard lid. I placed it over the box, hiding the documents and the torn card from view. I took the spool of navy blue satin ribbon and wrapped it around the package. I pulled the fabric tight and tied a secure, immaculate knot. The trap was sealed. I glanced at the digital clock on my computer monitor. It was 8 in the morning. The birthday gala commenced at 3 in the afternoon. I opened the web browser and navigated to the Premium Courier Service portal. I had prepared the delivery order the previous day, but I needed to finalize the dispatch. I confirmed the destination address matching the Portsmouth Harbor Club. I verified the recipient name, Evelyn James. I locked in the delivery window. The courier was instructed to walk into the ballroom and hand the package directly to the recipient at exactly 3:30. That specific time was chosen with tactical precision. At 3:30, the guests would be seated at their designated tables. The venue coordinator would be pouring the champagne for the first toast. The room would be focused entirely on the head table. Evelyn would be at the height of her manufactured glory. I clicked the final confirmation button. The screen generated a tracking number. A driver was dispatched to my home to collect the package. 30 minutes later, the doorbell echoed through the quiet house. I walked to the front door and pulled it open. A man wearing a dark uniform jacket stood on the porch, holding a digital scanning device. A white delivery van idled in my driveway, emitting a small cloud of exhaust into the freezing air. "Good morning," the driver said. "I have a scheduled premium pickup for a delivery to Portsmouth." I picked up the cream-colored box from the entryway table and handed it to him. The driver inspected the dimensions and placed his scanner over the barcode I had printed and attached to the bottom. The device emitted a sharp electronic chirp. The sound signaled the point of no return. The package was officially in the custody of the courier network. The sequence was locked. "Delivery is guaranteed for 3:30 this afternoon," the driver confirmed. He tucked the box under his arm, turned around, and walked back to his idling vehicle. I stood on the porch and watched the van reverse out of my driveway and disappear down the suburban street. The physical evidence was gone. The countdown had officially begun. I stepped back inside and locked the door. The ambient temperature in the hallway felt warmer. I walked into the kitchen to prepare breakfast. I cracked eggs into a skillet and toasted slices of bread. The mundane domestic routine grounded me. My cellular phone chimed on the kitchen counter. A text message notification illuminated the screen. It was Vanessa. She was already at the Portsmouth Harbor Club, managing the morning setup. The message included a photograph of the ballroom interior. I opened the image. The venue looked spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the gray Atlantic Ocean. Round tables were draped in crisp white linens. Enormous arrangements of white hydrangeas and blue thistles served as centerpieces. In the background, a cluster of metallic gold balloons shaped into the numbers 6 and 5 floated near the head table. "Everything looks amazing," Vanessa typed beneath the photograph. "Mom is getting her hair done right now. She is so excited for the special delivery you mentioned. She keeps guessing what it is. Thank you for making her day perfect, Aaliyah." I stared at the image of the empty ballroom. The dramatic irony was almost suffocating. Vanessa was standing inside a room I had completely defunded, thanking me for a diamond necklace that did not exist. She was photographing the exact location where their entire familial structure was about to detonate. I did not reply to the message. I deleted the conversation thread from my phone. I no longer needed to maintain the diversion. The bait was swallowed, and the trap was in transit. I heard the sound of footsteps padding down the stairs. Maya walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She wore a thick fleece pullover and fleece-lined socks. She looked at the eggs sizzling in the pan and offered a sleepy smile. "Morning, Mom," she said, sliding onto a bar stool at the kitchen island. "Good morning, sweetheart," I replied, sliding a plate of food across the counter. "Eat a good breakfast. We are going on a trip today." Maya picked up her fork. She looked confused. A trip to where? I poured a glass of orange juice and set it next to her plate. I walked around the counter and kissed the top of her head. "We are going to the White Mountains," I said. "We are going to find a good hiking trail and drink hot apple cider. We are going to spend the entire day outside." Her eyes widened. "But what about the birthday party? Are we not supposed to stay in town?" "We are completely finished with that party," I told her. My voice was gentle, but absolute. "We have better things to do with our weekend. Go pack your heavy boots and your winter gloves. We leave in an hour." Maya did not ask any further questions. The relief washed over her face, visible and profound. She ate her breakfast quickly, eager to escape the heavy gravity of the weekend. I packed a canvas backpack with water bottles, trail snacks, and emergency supplies. I filled a thermal flask with hot coffee. I moved through the house with a singular focus. The Portsmouth Harbor Club, the gold balloons, the deleted credit cards, and the approaching courier were all fading into the rearview mirror. I was taking my daughter to a place where the air was clean and the horizon was vast. We loaded the supplies into the trunk of my sport utility vehicle. I secured the doors to the house and climbed into the driver's seat. I started the engine and turned the heater to maximum. I backed out of the driveway and pointed the vehicle north toward the rugged peaks of the mountain range. I glanced at the dashboard clock. It was 10:30 in the morning. 5 hours remained until the courier walked into the ballroom. 5 hours until Evelyn unwrapped her reality. The execution was entirely out of my hands now. The collision was inevitable. The drive north on Interstate 93 offered a gradual transition from suburban density to raw wilderness. The concrete overpasses and shopping plazas of the lower counties gave way to the towering, jagged peaks of the Franconia Ridge. The sky remained a uniform slate gray, promising an early winter freeze. I guided my vehicle through the winding mountain passes, feeling the elevation climb. The cellular signal on my dashboard display dropped from 4 bars to 2. I welcomed the isolation. Maya sat in the passenger seat, watching the dense pine forests blur past her window. The tension that had rigidified her posture for the past week began to dissolve. She rested her head against the cool glass. She did not check her phone. She did not ask about her grandmother or the birthday gala taking place 80 miles behind us. The geographical distance provided a physical barrier against the toxicity we had left in Concord. We reached the trailhead parking lot just before noon. The air at this altitude carried a sharp bite cutting through our heavy winter coats. We laced up our hiking boots and adjusted our woolen scarves. Maya found a sturdy fallen branch near the edge of the woods and claimed it as her walking stick. She pointed toward the tree line with a genuine, unburdened smile. We stepped onto the dirt path and began the ascent. The trail was steep, winding through a dense canopy of evergreen trees and bare maples. The ground crunched beneath our boots, a mixture of frozen mud and decaying pine needles. The physical exertion required focus. My lungs burned with the cold, clean oxygen. My leg muscles strained against the incline. This type of profound quiet was alien to my usual weekend routine. For the better part of a decade, my Saturdays were hijacked by Evelyn's manufactured emergencies. A broken sprinkler head, an argument with a neighbor, a misplaced country club invitation. My mother treated my weekends as her personal crisis management hours. I would answer her panicked phone calls, drop my own plans, and rush over to the Colonial House to negotiate peace or write a check. I had conditioned myself to remain on perpetual standby, anticipating the next disaster. Today I was off duty. I was walking through a forest with my daughter, listening to the wind rattle the bare branches. I thought about the contrast between our current environment and the Portsmouth Harbor Club. I checked my wristwatch. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At this exact moment, Evelyn was likely standing in the center of the oceanfront ballroom, scrutinizing the table linens. She would be berating a young venue coordinator because the white napkins lacked the correct starch stiffness. Vanessa would be trailing a few steps behind her, holding a clipboard and nodding in agreement. They were currently trapped in a self-imposed pressure cooker of social anxiety, desperate to project an image of effortless wealth. They were fussing over floral centerpieces and champagne flutes, entirely ignorant of the financial void waiting beneath their feet. Maya reached a steep cluster of granite boulders and scrambled up them with the agility of a mountain goat. She stood at the top, looking down at me, and laughed. The sound echoed through the quiet trees. It was a rich, unfiltered sound. I realized in that moment that true protection is not shielding a child from the blow. True protection is removing the child from the arena where the blows are thrown. We hiked for another 2 hours, reaching a scenic overlook that offered a panoramic view of the Pemigewasset River Valley. The water below looked like a ribbon of dark glass cutting through the dormant winter forest. We found a broad, flat rock near the edge of the clearing and sat down to rest. I unzipped my canvas backpack and retrieved the stainless steel thermos. I unscrewed the cap and poured hot apple cider into 2 insulated cups. The steam curled upward into the freezing air, carrying the rich scent of cinnamon and clove. I handed a cup to Maya. She wrapped her gloved hands around the metal, savoring the heat. We sat in comfortable silence, watching a solitary hawk circle the air currents high above the valley. My mind mapped the timeline unfolding on the coast. It was 3 o'clock. The 50 invited guests were arriving at the Harbor Club. Men in tailored suits and women in cocktail dresses were handing their coats to the coat check attendant. They were walking into the ballroom, admiring the ocean view, and finding their assigned seats on Evelyn's meticulous seating chart. The string quartet was playing soft classical music in the corner. Evelyn was holding court near the head table, accepting early birthday wishes and scanning the room. She was waiting for the special delivery I had promised. I took a slow sip of my cider. The sweet, tart liquid warmed my throat. I felt a profound sense of equilibrium. I had executed the sequence flawlessly. There were no loose variables left to secure. The trap was a self-contained mechanism, and the target was already standing on the trigger. I pulled my cellular phone from the side pocket of my backpack. The screen displayed a single bar of service. It was enough to receive incoming data. The digital clock glowed white against the dark background image. 3:15. The venue coordinator was likely moving through the table, signaling the guests to take their seats for the formal welcoming toast. Evelyn would be taking her place at the center of the head table, surrounded by Vanessa David and her closest tennis club confidants. She would be smoothing the fabric of her navy blue dress, preparing to command the attention of her audience. 3:30. The courier van was pulling up to the front entrance of the Portsmouth Harbor Club. The driver was stepping out holding a heavy, cream-colored box tied with a navy blue satin ribbon. He was walking past the valet desk, navigating the lobby, and entering the grand ballroom. He was carrying a payload of absolute, undeniable facts directly toward the head table. I kept my eyes on the phone screen, resting it on my knee. Maya was pointing out different mountain peaks, trying to guess their names from a map we had studied earlier. I nodded and offered my own guesses, keeping my voice light and engaged. The clock shifted. 3:45. The device vibrated against the denim fabric of my jeans. A gentle, isolated buzz. A notification banner dropped down from the top edge of the screen. It was an automated message from the Premium Courier Service portal. Delivery confirmed. Package handed directly to recipient. Signed for by E. James at 3:32 p.m. I read the text twice. The words confirmed the successful deployment. The cream-colored box was physically resting on the white linen of the head table. Evelyn had signed her own name to accept the delivery. The diversion had worked perfectly. She had welcomed the package into her inner sanctum, believing it contained a $4,000 diamond pendant. The physical evidence of her malice and her financial ruin was now in her hands. I pressed the volume button on the side of my phone, toggling the device into silent mode. I disabled the vibration function. I did not want the tranquility of the mountain overlook interrupted by the frantic digital fallout that was about to occur. I slid the phone deep into the bottom compartment of my canvas backpack and zipped it shut. I picked up my cup of apple cider and turned to look at my daughter. She had a small smudge of dirt on her cheek and a bright, healthy flush from the cold wind. She looked peaceful. She looked safe. I smiled at her. It was the first genuine, uncalculated smile I had produced in 7 years. Miles away in a room filled with gold balloons and expensive floral arrangements, the atmosphere was rapidly deteriorating. I was not present to witness the detonation. I did not hear the collective gasp of the country club guests or see the blood drain from my mother's face. I did not watch the venue manager walk up to the table to announce the deleted credit card. But my niece Lily was sitting 3 chairs away from Evelyn. Lily saw everything. She watched the entire facade shatter in real time. She would later recount the exact sequence of events, providing me with a granular description of the exact moment the matriarchy collapsed. According to Lily, the ballroom was filled with the low hum of polite conversation and the clinking of silverware. Evelyn stood up from her chair at the center of the head table. She picked up a silver butter knife and gently tapped the side of her crystal champagne flute. The sharp ringing sound echoed across the room, signaling the 50 guests to lower their voices and direct their attention forward. The sharp ringing sound of the butter knife striking crystal cut through the low murmur of the Portsmouth Harbor Club ballroom. 50 guests turned their attention toward the head table. The waitstaff paused their service, standing discreetly against the perimeter walls, holding silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. Lily later described the atmosphere as thick with manufactured anticipation. Evelyn stood at the center of the long table. She wore a tailored navy blue evening gown that swept the floor. Her hair was perfectly styled, heavily sprayed to withstand the coastal humidity. A cluster of metallic gold balloons shaped into the numbers 6 and 5 floated gently behind her chair. David sat to her left, staring blankly at the floral centerpiece. Vanessa sat to her right, vibrating with anxious energy, eager to witness the unveiling of the anticipated diamond necklace. Evelyn cleared her throat. She offered a gracious, practiced smile to her assembled audience. "Thank you all for being here today," she announced. Her voice projected across the room, amplified by the excellent acoustics of the high arched ceiling. "It means the world to me to celebrate this milestone, surrounded by my dearest friends and my wonderful family." She paused, allowing a polite ripple of applause to wash over the tables. Before we raise our glasses for the first toast, Evelyn continued gesturing gracefully toward the heavy cream-colored box resting on the white linen tablecloth in front of her. "I want to acknowledge a very special delivery that just arrived." She placed her hands on the heavy cardboard container. She looked directly at her tennis club acquaintances seated at the adjacent tables, ensuring they were paying close attention. "My daughter Aaliyah could not be here today due to a scheduling conflict," she lied, smoothly constructing a narrative of a busy, successful executive prioritizing an unfortunate business obligation. "But she arranged for this package to be couriered directly to the venue. I thought it would be wonderful to open it together and share her generous spirit with all of you." Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes locked onto the box. She had spent the past 48 hours convincing Evelyn that the package contained a $4,000 piece of premium jewelry. The expectation of luxury was palpable. Evelyn reached out and grasped the end of the navy blue satin ribbon. With a deliberate, theatrical flourish, she pulled the tail. The immaculate knot surrendered easily. The ribbon slipped loose, cascading onto the white tablecloth. She lifted the heavy cardboard lid. She handed it to Vanessa, who placed it carefully on an empty chair. Evelyn looked down into the open container. The guests seated closest to the head table craned their necks, eager to catch a glimpse of the velvet jewelry box they assumed was hidden inside. The first item resting at the top of the stack was the calligraphed place card. Evelyn picked it up. She read the single word written in meticulous looping cursive, Maya. A subtle frown flickered across Evelyn's perfectly powdered forehead. The appearance of the band granddaughter's name delivered on a formal place card to the seat of honor was a jarring anomaly. It did not align with the narrative of a submissive daughter offering a luxury apology gift. She set the place card down next to her water goblet, face up, where David and Vanessa could clearly read the name. She reached back into the box. Her manicured fingers bypassed the torn construction paper fragments resting in the center and grabbed the thick stack of legal documents positioned at the bottom. She pulled the paperwork out and laid it flat on the table. The top document featured a heavy embossed seal. It was the notarized property deed transferring the $500,000 colonial house on Linden Street exclusively into her name. Evelyn's eyes widened. She scanned the bold legal text identifying her as the sole legal owner of the historic property. The initial shock registered on her face as profound, genuine pleasure. A house. Her difficult daughter had not sent a diamond pendant. She had sent the title to a premium piece of real estate. It was an extravagant capitulation far exceeding her expectations. "Oh my goodness," Evelyn breathed, pressing her hand against her chest, simulating an overwhelming surge of gratitude. "It is the deed to the Concord house. She transferred the property into my name." A murmur of genuine astonishment rippled through the guests. Gifting a $500,000 asset was a staggering display of wealth and deference. Evelyn beamed, absorbing the envious stares of her country club peers. She felt she had achieved the ultimate victory. Then her eyes dropped to the secondary document, securely fastened to the front of the deed with a heavy silver paperclip. It was the roofing estimate from the Manchester contractor. The text clearly outlined the severe structural degradation occurring above the east wing. The bold numeric figure at the bottom of the page demanded immediate attention. $8,400. Evelyn's smile faltered. The warm glow of victory cooled slightly. The gift of real estate suddenly carried a substantial immediate liability, a liability she was now legally responsible to satisfy. She unclipped the estimate and set it aside, trying to maintain her composed exterior. She focused on the next document in the stack. It was the single page printed on my official actuarial firm letterhead. She began to read the formal termination notice. Effective immediately, all recurring subsidies and automated financial support provided to Evelyn and David James are hereby terminated. This includes, but is not limited to, the monthly residential stipend, the seasonal heating oil account, the automated pharmacy co-pays, and the property maintenance services. Lily watched her grandmother's face closely. Lily reported that the transition from arrogant triumph to absolute terror occurred in less than 5 seconds. The color drained entirely from Evelyn's cheeks, leaving her skin a pale, sickly gray. The termination letter outlined the systematic destruction of her artificial environment. She was reading the death warrant of her comfortable existence. The invisible life support machines had been turned off. She was now the owner of a leaking house with zero automated income to sustain it. Evelyn continued reading the final sentence of the letterhead. The guarantor contract associated with the Portsmouth Harbor Club has been voided. The credit card on file has been permanently deleted. Her hands began to tremble. The thick, premium paper shook visibly, broadcasting her internal panic to the guests seated at the adjacent tables. She was standing in the center of a rented ballroom, surrounded by expensive floral arrangements and catered food, realizing she possessed no mechanism to pay the bill. The financial safety net she relied upon for 7 years was gone. Desperate to find a retraction or an explanation, she pulled the next document from the stack. It was the itemized spreadsheet, the column of numbers detailing the exact cost of her dependents. She stared at the bold figure at the bottom right corner, $142,000. The ledger exposed the ugly transactional reality of her life. If any of the guests saw that page, her carefully curated image of independent wealth would shatter. She would be revealed as a parasite, completely reliant on the daughter she constantly belittled. Evelyn attempted to slide the spreadsheet back into the cream-colored box hiding the numerical evidence from public view, but her trembling hands betrayed her. She fumbled with the paperwork, knocking the box sideways. The movement dislodged the final items resting inside the container. The 4 torn fragments of heavy construction paper spilled out onto the white tablecloth. The jagged pieces of Maya's handmade birthday card scattered across the linen, landing next to the calligraphed place card. The intricate drawing of the layered cake with 65 tiny candles lay fractured in front of her. The physical evidence of her cruelty was now completely exposed. The torn card provided the devastating context for the financial execution. Evelyn stared at the shredded construction paper and understood exactly why the guillotine had dropped. The coordinated isolation of a 12-year-old girl had triggered an administrative apocalypse. Vanessa leaned over, attempting to read the termination letter clutched in Evelyn's shaking hands. "Mom, what is it?" Vanessa whispered, her voice tight with confusion. "Where is the necklace?" Evelyn could not speak, her throat constricted. The manufactured reality she had maintained for a decade was collapsing around her in real time. She was trapped at the head table, holding the undeniable proof of her own ruin, staring at an audience of 50 people expecting a celebratory toast. She needed to gather the documents, shove them back into the box, and invent a plausible lie to explain her sudden distress. She needed to blame a sudden illness or feign a panic attack to escape the room. Before Evelyn could open her mouth to spin a deception, the heavy wooden double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. The venue manager, a tall man wearing a severe black suit, walked briskly into the room. He bypassed the perimeter waitstaff and marched directly down the center aisle, navigating between the round guest tables. His posture was rigid, projecting a distinct lack of the deferential courtesy usually reserved for high-end clients. He was not carrying a champagne bottle for the toast. He was carrying a black leather portfolio. He approached the head table, stopping directly in front of Evelyn. The 50 assembled guests fell completely silent, watching the sudden intrusion. The manager did not pull Evelyn aside. He did not attempt to whisper discreetly in her ear. He stood his ground, clearing his throat loudly, demanding the attention of the entire room. The climax of the operation had arrived. The venue manager halted directly in front of the head table. The ambient noise in the ballroom evaporated, leaving a heavy, uncomfortable silence. 50 pairs of eyes locked onto the tall man in the severe black suit. He held his leather portfolio tightly against his ribs. He leaned forward, attempting to bridge the distance across the white tablecloth. "Mrs. James," he murmured, keeping his voice low, striving for professional discretion. "I apologize for interrupting your presentation. We have encountered an administrative anomaly that requires your immediate attention regarding the final catering balance. If you would step into the hallway with me for just a moment, we can resolve this quietly." It was a standard protocol for luxury event spaces. Venue coordinators are trained to shield their clients from public embarrassment, dealing with declined transactions or vendor disputes behind closed doors. The manager was offering Evelyn an exit strategy. He was providing her an opportunity to handle the crisis without an audience. Evelyn was holding the termination letter printed on my actuarial firm letterhead. She was staring at a document stating my credit card had been permanently deleted from the venue portal. Her cognitive processing was overwhelmed by the sudden catastrophic collapse of her financial reality. She was operating in a state of sheer panic. Panic, in Evelyn's psychological architecture, often disguises itself as arrogance. When threatened, her default defense mechanism is to assert dominance. She perceived the manager's whispered request as an attack on her authority in front of her country club peers. She felt the need to project absolute control to demonstrate that she was the undisputed matriarch of the event. She rejected the discreet exit strategy. "I will not step into any hallway," Evelyn snapped, her voice sharp and elevated, carrying easily across the silent room. "I am in the middle of addressing my guests. We are preparing for a toast. Whatever administrative anomaly you claim to have, you can say it right here in front of my family. I have nothing to hide." The venue manager straightened his posture. The professional deference vanished from his expression. When a client explicitly revokes their right to privacy and demands a public confrontation, the hospitality protocols dissolve. He opened his leather portfolio and extracted a printed invoice. "Very well, Mrs. James," the manager said, his voice now projecting at a normal conversational volume, clearly audible to the surrounding tables. The financial guarantor for this event, Aaliyah James, accessed our online portal earlier this week. She invoked her legal right to terminate the contract and permanently removed her credit card information from our billing system. A collective intake of breath swept through the ballroom. The guests seated closest to the head table leaned in, captivated by the sudden exposure of the host's financial instability. The remaining balance for the catering, the floral arrangements, and the room rental is $3,500. The manager continued reading directly from the invoice. Our policy requires full payment before the main course is served. Since the guarantor has withdrawn support, we need a new payment method immediately. Are you prepared to settle this balance now, or should I instruct the waitstaff to suspend the service? Poetic justice is a rare and beautiful phenomenon. It occurs when a person is destroyed by the exact mechanism they weaponized against someone else. Evelyn had spent a decade using my money to construct a facade of superiority, demanding that I remain a silent, invisible sponsor. She had banned my daughter from this exact room to prove her dominance. And now her own arrogance had forced a stranger to publicly announce that her wealth was an illusion and her credit was non-existent. The silence in the room was absolute. 50 faces stared at the matriarch, waiting for her to produce a platinum card and dismiss the inconvenience. Evelyn stood frozen. Her trembling hands clutched the termination letter. She looked at the manager. She looked at the invoice. She had no platinum card. She had a checking account that was currently missing its monthly $1,200 automated transfer. "I do not," she stammered, her voice cracking, losing its airy, confident cadence. "I do not have that amount on me right now. There must be a mistake. Aaliyah promised to handle the venue." "She did handle it," the manager replied flatly. "She canceled the funding. Who is the responsible party assuming the debt today?" Evelyn turned frantically toward Vanessa. Vanessa was the golden child, the daughter who stayed local, the daughter whose children were deemed the real grandchildren. Evelyn expected loyalty. She expected her favored child to step into the breach and offer a solution. "Vanessa, do you have your card?" Evelyn whispered desperately. "Just put it on your card for now. I will pay you back." Vanessa recoiled as if Evelyn had asked her to handle a live explosive. Her husband, the recreational vehicle salesman, stared at his plate, avoiding eye contact. "Are you insane?" Vanessa hissed, her volume rising, abandoning any pretense of decorum. "I do not have $3,000 sitting in my checking account. I thought Aaliyah was paying for this. You told me she paid for everything. You told me she was buying you a diamond necklace." "She lied to us," Evelyn cried, pointing a shaking finger at the scattered documents on the table. "She sent a box full of garbage. She gave us the house, but she canceled the oil delivery. She canceled everything. She set us up." The realization that the financial foundation was gone triggered an immediate, brutal shift in their dynamic. The matriarchal alliance was built entirely on the comfort provided by my invisible subsidies. The second the money disappeared, the loyalty evaporated. They were two passengers trapped on a sinking ship, fighting over a single life vest. "This is your fault," Vanessa shouted, standing up from her chair and pointing aggressively at her mother. "You pushed her too far this time. I told you not to mess with Maya. I told you Aaliyah would snap if you kept excluding her kid." "I did not exclude her," Evelyn shrieked, abandoning any attempt to maintain her country club persona. "We agreed on this. You were the one who suggested we skip the Easter baskets. You were the one who complained about Maya coming on the ski trip. Do not act like you are innocent. We planned this together." The accusation echoed through the ballroom. The guests murmured in shock. The pristine image of the loving, devoted family was violently ripped apart. Vanessa grabbed her cellular phone from her evening bag. Her face flushed a deep, angry red. She was determined to shift the blame entirely onto her mother. She unlocked the device and navigated to the messaging application. She held the screen up, thrusting it toward the adjacent tables where Aunt Helen and Aunt Patricia were seated. "Read the chat," she yelled, her voice echoing off the high ceiling. "Read the Sunday Planners group text. Mom is the one who said Maya is not really one of ours. Mom is the one who hates Aaliyah. I just went along with it because Mom pays for my kids' dance lessons." The venue manager stood silently, observing the chaotic implosion of a family unit. He did not need to ask for a payment method again. He recognized a defaulted contract when he saw one. He closed his leather portfolio, turned on his heel, and signaled the waitstaff. The servers began quietly clearing the untouched plates and collecting the champagne flutes from the tables. The birthday gala was over before the first toast was even poured. Amidst the screaming match between Evelyn and Vanessa David, James remained seated. The passive hardware store owner, the man who avoided conflict for 12 years, sat quietly, observing the wreckage of his life. He looked at the venue staff dismantling the party. He listened to his wife and his oldest daughter violently accusing each other of calculated cruelty toward a 12-year-old girl. He looked down at the white tablecloth. Resting near his water goblet was the calligraphed place card bearing Maya's name. Scattered around the place card were the 4 jagged fragments of the heavy construction paper birthday card. The intricate layered cake with 65 tiny candles destroyed by the child who drew it. David reached out slowly. His rough, calloused hands picked up 2 of the torn fragments. He lined the jagged edges, pressing them together on the linen cloth. He stared at the ruined drawing. He realized the depth of the deception. He remembered the text message I sent him about the fictitious math competition. He understood that his wife had actively lied to him to ensure his compliance while she systematically isolated his granddaughter. He recognized that his own passivity, his refusal to demand the truth, had enabled the abuse. Evelyn continued screaming at Vanessa, her face contorted with rage, demanding respect, demanding loyalty, demanding a solution to the financial crisis. David stood up from his chair. The movement was slow, deliberate, and heavy. He did not yell. He did not match their manic energy. He held the 2 torn fragments of the birthday card in his left hand. He turned to face his wife. Evelyn stopped screaming. She looked at her husband, expecting him to intervene, expecting him to defend her against Vanessa's accusations and the venue manager's demands. David looked at the scattered legal documents. He looked at the termination letter. He looked at the torn card in his hand. He looked Evelyn directly in the eyes. The silence that followed was absolute. 50 guests held their breath, waiting for the patriarch to speak. David did not raise his voice. He delivered the final fatal blow with a quiet, crushing devastation. "What did you do?" he whispered. He dropped the torn fragments onto the table. He turned around and walked away from the head table. He did not look back. He walked down the center aisle, past the stunned country club guests, out the double wooden doors, and into the cold autumn afternoon, leaving his wife standing alone amidst the ruins of her own creation. Miles away in the White Mountains, sitting on a flat granite boulder overlooking the Pemigewasset River Valley, my canvas backpack sat undisturbed. Deep inside the bottom compartment, buried under thermal flasks and trail snacks, my cellular phone began to light up. The screen illuminated, registering the first of 42 missed calls as the fallout of the public audit commenced. The sun dipped below the jagged silhouette of the Franconia Ridge, casting long, dark shadows across the Pemigewasset River Valley. The temperature dropped several degrees in a matter of minutes. Maya zipped her heavy winter coat up to her chin and rubbed her gloved hands together. We had spent 4 hours on the mountain, exploring the granite trails and breathing the sharp, cold air. It was time to descend. I reached into the bottom compartment of my canvas backpack to retrieve my car keys. My fingers brushed against the smooth glass screen of my cellular phone. I pulled the device out and pressed the side button. The screen illuminated the dimming forest around us. The display was a solid block of stacked notifications, 42 missed calls, 19 voice messages, a continuous stream of urgent text alerts. The chronological log offered a precise map of the social demolition occurring on the coast. The earliest missed calls originated from Vanessa, arriving in rapid succession just after 3:30. Those initial attempts represented confusion and panic. The subsequent calls came from Aunt Helen and Aunt Patricia, representing the shock of the extended family. The final cluster of missed calls belonged to Evelyn. The frequency of her attempts indicated a transition from public humiliation to frantic rage. She had watched her country club peers walk out of a defunded ballroom. She had watched her husband walk away from the head table. She was dialing my number, demanding that I restore the artificial gravity of her world. I did not open the voicemail application. I did not read the text messages. I did not need to hear the audio recordings of a collapsing matriarchy. The data was irrelevant. I held down the power button until the screen went entirely black. I slipped the dormant phone back into my bag and picked up the stainless steel thermos. We walked down the dirt trail, navigating the descent in a comfortable, quiet rhythm. We drove home under a sky filled with early winter stars, leaving the wreckage of the Portsmouth Harbor Club 80 miles behind us. 6 months passed. The New Hampshire winter arrived with aggressive snowstorms and departed, leaving behind a damp, muddy spring. The consequences I packaged in that cream-colored box took root in Concord and blossomed into a harsh new reality. Evelyn and David retained ownership of the historic colonial house on Linden Street. The notarized gift deed was legally binding. They possessed the title free and clear. But home ownership without an invisible financial sponsor proved to be an unforgiving education. In early January, the Municipal Tax Authority mailed the annual property assessment. The $12,000 invoice arrived in their mailbox. There was no automated transfer from my checking account to absorb the impact. Evelyn could not wave a hand and make the envelope disappear. She attempted to pass the financial burden to Vanessa. Vanessa experienced the true cost of being the favored child. For her entire adult life, Vanessa believed her golden status was a reward for her loyalty. She discovered it was merely a luxury I had been subsidizing. When Evelyn presented the property tax bill demanding a contribution, Vanessa's husband refused to comply. The recreational vehicle salesman looked at his own modest savings account and declined to fund his mother-in-law's premium lifestyle. The refusal shattered the alliance. Evelyn, accustomed to instant compliance, turned her bitter resentment toward her oldest daughter. Vanessa became the new target of Evelyn's constant criticism. The Sunday dinner traditions deteriorated into hostile arguments over grocery bills and utility costs. The Sunday Planners group chat went permanently silent. To satisfy the municipal tax collector and keep the radiators warm, Evelyn and David were forced to initiate a reverse mortgage on the colonial house. A bank appraiser walked through the property, noting the square footage and assessing the condition of the structure. He documented the severe water damage in the upstairs hallway. The slate roof had finally given way during a February thaw, sending melted snow pooling onto the carpet. The Manchester roofing contractor demanded payment up front before his crew would climb the ladders. Evelyn had to sign away the equity of the home she valued so highly just to keep the ceiling dry. The country club lunches ceased. The extravagant floral arrangements disappeared. The pristine image she had curated for decades crumbled under the weight of basic arithmetic. She was isolated in a quiet house, managing a budget she did not understand, alienating the only daughter she had left. The only person who salvaged a fragment of humanity from the debris was my father. In late November, I received a handwritten letter in my secure post office box. The envelope bore David's return address. I opened it at my glass desk. The letter contained no excuses. It offered no justifications for his 12 years of passive complicity. David wrote that he had spent his life keeping his head down, avoiding the difficult conversations. He admitted that his silence had provided the environment where his wife's cruelty could thrive. He acknowledged that he had failed to protect his granddaughter. He asked for nothing in return. He simply wanted to place his apology on the record. I read the letter and recognized a genuine admission of guilt. I drafted a response, establishing a rigid perimeter. I dictated the terms of engagement. David was permitted to visit Maya on alternating Saturday afternoons. He was required to drive to our town. He was forbidden from bringing Evelyn. He was explicitly forbidden from mentioning her name or discussing the Concord house in Maya's presence. If he violated the perimeter, the access would be permanently revoked. He agreed to the conditions without hesitation. He drives down twice a month. He takes Maya to a local diner on Main Street. They sit in a vinyl booth, order vanilla milkshakes, and talk about her science projects. He looks older now. His shoulders carry the visible strain of living in a house filled with his wife's regret. But when he looks across the table at Maya, his eyes are clear. He is earning his title as a grandfather, one quiet afternoon at a time. Today is a Saturday. The morning sun filters through the kitchen window of my home, casting a warm glow across the marble island. The slate roof above us is structurally sound. The property taxes are paid from my own accounts. The environment is entirely secure. I stand at the stove, flipping pancakes on a cast iron skillet. The kitchen smells of melting butter and warm maple syrup. Maya sits at the counter wearing her oversized fleece pajamas. She is sketching in a new spiral notebook. Her posture is relaxed. The watchful, anxious energy that used to govern her movements has evaporated. She does not scan the room to gauge the emotional temperature. She does not have to calculate her worth or prove her right to occupy a seat at the table. She knows she belongs here. I slide a stack of golden pancakes onto a ceramic plate and place it in front of her. She looks up from her drawing and smiles, reaching for the bottle of syrup. We do not talk about the Harbor Club. We do not discuss the shattered seating charts, the deleted credit cards, or the reverse mortgage. Those elements belong to a past life, a closed ledger gathering dust in an encrypted folder. The quiet hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my daughter humming a melody under her breath are the only sounds in the room. This is the yield of the boundary I drew. This is the return on my investment. Protecting your child from a toxic environment is the most important financial decision you will ever execute. It requires closing the accounts, shutting down the subsidies, and walking away from the table. If someone mistakes your kindness for an open account, close it. Drop a comment and subscribe. The cast iron skillet cools on the stove, emitting a faint metallic ping as the heated metal contracts. The scent of melted butter and warm maple syrup lingers in the kitchen air. Maya sits across the marble island, her head bent over a sketchbook, her pencil moving in steady, unhurried strokes. She hums a low, meandering tune. The sound is light, unburdened. I stand by the sink, watching the morning sun catch the dust motes suspended in the air, and I think about the architecture of a family. In American culture, we are handed a very specific script regarding familial duty. We are raised on a diet of idioms designed to enforce compliance. Blood is thicker than water. Honor your elders. Keep the peace. We are taught that a traditional family structure is the ultimate metric of a successful life. We are instructed to revere the dining room table as a sacred space, a place where generations gather to pass down wisdom and share the harvest. But no one warns you about what happens when the people sitting at the head of that table view your existence as a transaction. No one provides a manual for how to handle a matriarchy that serves resentment on the good china and demands gratitude in return. For 7 years, I followed the script. I believed that financial provision equated to familial responsibility. I paid the mortgages, covered the heating oil, and funded the galas, operating under the delusion that my utility would eventually purchase a safe harbor for my daughter. I thought I was holding the roof up. I was actually paying for the privilege of standing in the rain. The turning point did not arrive with a shouted argument or a dramatic confrontation. It arrived in the quiet hallway of my own home, watching my 12-year-old child tear her handmade birthday card into 4 jagged pieces. Parenting requires a hyper-vigilant emotional awareness. It is not enough to ask your child how their day was and accept a one-word answer. You must learn to read the negative space. You must observe the way their shoulders tense when a specific name is mentioned. You must notice when they stop taking up space in a room. Maya did not cry when her grandmother banned her from the Portsmouth Harbor Club. Her silence was far more devastating than tears. Her silence meant she had already internalized the rejection. She had accepted her classification as an outsider. We spend hours teaching our children about fairness. We read them stories about justice, about sharing, about treating others with inherent dignity. We tell them their voices matter. We promise them they are worthy of unconditional affection. Yet how many parents contradict those exact lessons by forcing their children to endure the toxic mechanics of their own extended families? When we drag a child to a holiday dinner where they are treated as a secondary citizen, we are not teaching them respect for their elders. We are teaching them to tolerate abuse. We are showing them that love is conditional, erratic, and tied to their ability to endure humiliation quietly. If I had forced Maya to attend that birthday gala, if I had paid the caterer and smiled through the champagne toast, I would have handed her a blueprint for her own future subjugation. She would have grown into a woman who equated sacrifice with virtue, a woman who believed her own boundaries were negotiable. Breaking a generational cycle requires a brutal, unflinching honesty. It requires you to look at the people who gave you life and acknowledge that they are capable of inflicting profound harm. You must weigh the comfort of your own nostalgia against the psychological survival of your offspring. I chose my daughter. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep my parents warm.
I transferred the deed, severed the autopay systems, and allowed the artificial environment I had constructed to collapse. I let them experience the true cost of their cruelty.
Some might look at the wreckage of that birthday party and label my actions ruthless. They might argue that a daughter owes her mother forgiveness, that family requires compromise. But forgiveness requires repentance, and compromise requires a mutual desire for peace. You cannot negotiate with a fire. You can only remove the oxygen. My responsibility is not to the past. My responsibility sits at the kitchen island, sketching in a notebook, humming a quiet tune. By executing that administrative strike, I provided Maya with the most vital, long-term guidance a parent can offer. I showed her what a boundary looks like. I demonstrated that she does not have to earn her right to exist in any room. I proved that if a table does not have a seat for her, we will build our own table, even if it means eating alone. She will carry this lesson into her adulthood, when she navigates her own friendships, her own career, her own romantic partnerships. She will possess a baseline metric for how she deserves to be treated. She will know that anyone who demands her silence in exchange for their presence is offering a terrible bargain. She will know how to walk away. There is a quiet, steady strength in choosing the health of your immediate household over the sprawling, infected branches of a family tree. It is a lonely path at first. The phone stops ringing. The holiday invitations cease. The void left by the chaos feels unfamiliar. But soon, the silence transforms into something else. It transforms into safety. If you find yourself standing at that same crossroads, holding a pen over a checkbook, wondering if you should purchase another year of fake harmony, I want you to look at the child standing beside you. Ask yourself what kind of love you want them to accept 20 years from now. If someone mistakes your kindness for an open account, close it. Protect your peace, because no one else will do it for you. Follow the Revenge Order channel for more stories of ordinary people drawing the line and taking their lives back. I pour a fresh cup of coffee and walk toward the kitchen window. The morning frost is beginning to melt off the glass, leaving streaks of clear water running down the pane. Outside, the world is dormant, waiting for the ground to thaw. I think about the Colonial House in Concord. I think about the heavy slate roof, the water seeping into the plaster, the cold air slipping through the drafty corridors. We spend so much time constructing these physical shelters, believing the walls will keep the bitter elements at bay. We lock the deadbolts and turn up the heat, trusting the architecture to keep us safe. But sometimes the frost isn't coming from the outside. Sometimes the cold is already sitting in the living room. You just have to decide which doors you are finally willing to close, and whether the warmth you find afterward was worth the cost of the key.